Okay, Baruch Hashem, Perek Daled of the Heilige Tanya. A new Perek, Chevra. It's a very big thing, a new chapter. We're going to talk today about Gucci. Yeah, Gucci clothing. What other fancy brands are out there?
Louis Vuitton.
Louis Vuitton, that's a fancy one? Yeah? Like, what's the fanciest?
I think Gucci might have taken.
Gucci's the nicest clothing in the world?
But like they do like the main
The quality of it, the craftsmanship of it? No? It's the Machlokas here. Okay. We're going to talk, everyone's like, what does that have to do with Tanya? The answer is everything. Because we're going to talk about clothing today. Why are we talking about clothing? We're going to talk about spiritual clothing, conceptual clothing. What does that mean? There are, just like you have a body and you have a soul. So your body is like clothing for your soul. And just like you have a body and then you have clothing. So your clothing is clothing for your body. So let's go a little bit more detailed. Your soul, which we've been really diving into, which is the Esser Koiches, which are Nishtalsha from the Esser Spheres, which is really who you are, is those 10 powers. That's the fabric of your soul. The Chochmah Bina Das. Chesed Gevurah Tiferes Netzach Hod Yesod Malchus. Those powers, that's like the fabric of you on the side of the godly soul. But how does that godly soul, how does Chochmah show up? How do you express Chochmah? So the answer is, you need something called thought. And how does this power inside of you called love show up? How does it reveal itself? The answer is through speech and action. Thought, speech, and action are called the three levushim, are called the three garments, the three-piece Gucci suit, if you will. That are the expression of your soul. I mean, if we were a bunch of souls without bodies, it would be a little bit difficult to sort of like, hang out with other people, or put on tefillin for that matter. How would you do the mitzvahs, which we're going to get into, if you didn't have a body? Or how would you do the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, of saying Torah, if you couldn't speak? Or how would you do the mitzvah of thinking about Torah if you didn't have a machshava, you didn't have a thought, how to think? So let's make it clear. You have a soul, which is made up of those 10 powers. But your soul is not able to express itself unless it has levushim. In the same way that the levushim of a person, they do cover them. Clothing covers. But at the same time, clothing reveals. What do I mean by that? You're right, the clothing is covering the king. But by the king wearing his kingly clothing, I could recognize that he's the king. Right? It reveals to me something about the person. When a person is wearing a police uniform, I could see that he's a cop. It reveals something about the person. It allows for expression. That's why begodim come from the same language as boged, to rebel. The begodim is really a rebellion because it conceals. It's rebelling, it's concealing the real you. But at the same time, it's revealing. Because now you could see the person, the soul can express itself through thought, speech, and action. Now let's just take that one step deeper. Let's go from the opposite angle. Which means if you're having thoughts that go around in your head, it's not you. That's just the clothing. And by the way, bad thoughts are not because my soul is bad, so I'm thinking bad thoughts. No. The godly soul has its thought, speech, and action garments. That's why I said Gucci, because let's call that the real fine, gorgeous garments of the godly soul. And then the animal soul has its own set of garments of thought, speech, and action. So what do you think the godly soul thinks about? Yeah, you got it, Torah. And what do you think the godly soul speaks about? Can you guess? Torah, that's right. And any other mitzvahs that are mitzvahs the dibur, brachos, shema. And what do you think the godly soul does with its action? Mitzvahs, maisiyas, tefillin, tzitzis. It'd be hard to give tzedakah if there wasn't a hand to do it with, right? So that's the godly soul's garments. What do you think? It's like scary to think of. What do you think the animal soul's garments are doing? What's the animal soul's garments thinking about? Yeah, all sorts of diabolical sins and whatever, disgusting things. And what do you think the animal soul's garment of speech is talking about? Lashon hara, chilas. What's that?
Jordan, LeBron.
Yeah, fine. Just for no reason. Like, not that there's a purpose, like with learning up the sugya of 2K and what it means, but just stam, like hacking in it, not for God. And what do you think the animal soul's garments of action are involved in? Just total selfish body involvement, consciousness. You see these pythons, yeah, these guns, and there's this Barrett over here. Why? For what? Just a selfish, self-consumed. So that's the garments of the animal soul. So what's a common thing? The guy has like bad thoughts. Like, oh, I'm so bad. First of all, you're not bad whatsoever. It's your animal soul doing it. And it's not even the animal soul, it's the thoughts. It's the garments of the animal soul. It's such a far thing from you. Okay? Are you getting what I'm saying here? Is that once you flip that perspective of understanding how you are the godly soul, you're good. You're good, and we have to learn to choose that in a very deep and profound way. That that's you. Then you stop getting fazed so much when the garments of the animal soul of thought, speech, and action get a guy to do something. It just means the animal soul hijacked his garments. He took his garments, he hijacked them, and now it's convinced you to, look at that thing you shouldn't look at. Or say that juicy lashon hara, like, to the tip of your tongue, like, I could say the juiciest evil speech right now. Oh, and it's going to get everybody going. It's going to be like a home run. Lashon hara. And then, let's say, God forbid, a person fails. So, should he be all bummed out about it? Should he feel bad about it? Yeah. But why is he not bummed out about it?
It will lead him to do more bad.
It will lead him to do more bad. And it's not him. It's an incorrect assessment to think that I am that evil speech. You're not. That's just the garments of your animal soul expressing evil speech. Okay? That's the introduction we need for the fourth pair. Yes?
So then how are we the good things?
You're the neshama, and we're going to see the neshama infuses itself into the machshava dibur maisa. Like, we fill and you become totally involved. We're going to explain this like in an intense way, like a soul fills a body. That when your soul, chachmi das, plunge into thought of Torah, your thoughts become kadosh. When your midos of chesed gvur tefes plunge into the things you say, your words become holy. Your words become words of your godly soul. And here's where it really gets trippy. When you do actions from your godly soul, this arm is putting on tefillin with love. Because Kohanim, with love, coursing through, your hands become electrified. They become vessels of your godly soul, like chariots. Like your hands, these are hands of the Lord. You hear what I'm saying? Your hands become infused with godliness. You hear that? Because when a person, that's why many of the people, we always look to get things that tzaddikim owned. Like if it's tzaddik, I was one time in Philly for a wedding. I was by my wife's family, and we had a wedding there, and there was a big chassid from Tanya Shiur who had moved to Cleveland, and he was the Masada Kedushin. So he had, at the wedding, First of all, we saw each other like, it's like we were in the middle of some nowhere place, and you see like two, Hasidim see each other like, Taka, look at that. It was such a machaya. So his wife went up to him, like, I'm sure you guys know each other. And lo and behold, there was an old, Itchimar Hasidim. So he gave the chassan Itchimar's white garter. That somehow that he was able to get it. He was able to get it. So under the chuppah, he's putting on that's a good thing. If you could wear that gartel, that's a good thing. The Oiv Yisrael had, the Tosha Rebbe had the Oiv Yisrael's Bekesha from Yom Tov. You know what that means? You know what that means to wear? You know what that means if you had the Baal Shem Tov's Kiddush cup? There's a Yid that I know who has the B'nai Yissacher's tefillin bag. I touched it one time, I almost fell over. I'm not kidding. And not because I'm righteous, just because it was radioactive. I felt it, mamish. Because with the tzaddikim, they put even into their chafotzim, they put even into their items, it like permeated. It's not games. And by the way, the same is true on the other side. If somebody had like, some horribly evil, villain's clothing, you would not want to wear those. Do not wear that. Just do not. I don't care what they're selling for on eBay. We have like, I don't know, some rapper that killed somebody, Shem Yirachim, and we have his, I don't know, his like bling. Whatever you do not put that on. I'm not kidding. Because the Rishonim infuse things with their Nefesh Bahamis, and the Tzaddikim infuse their clothing with Nefesh Elikis. Okay, all that is an introduction for this.
So it's about you have to change his wardrobe. You have to run. You got to shoot on the gloves.
You could do tshuva, and then you turn them into mitzvahs. I don't know if you should still be wearing like Marilyn Manson shirts or anything anymore. Better turn that one into a shmata. Clean your house for Shabbos with it. But yeah, you can do tshuva. But it's you should know it's not a simple thing. Sometimes I've noticed that people have like old things that like maybe stuff happened in those t-shirts, sweatpants, like stuff happened, and sometimes he's got to actually get rid of some of those things. Sometimes it's like it's not worth it to try to flip the whole thing over, even though it could be. And that's what I said, maybe turn into like a shmata to clean your house for Shabbos. But sometimes, by the way, this is one of the minhagim that we throw things into the fires of Rabbi Shimon. That the Orach Chaim already spoke about that. There's sometimes you just have to let certain things go. I remember about 7 years ago, I threw something into the fire. It was like a game changer. I told my wife, she was like, I was waiting for that to just be thrown in. There's such a thing. Fire is also like a cleansing. It's like it takes the very item, takes it down to its constituent parts. It's like a total breaking down, back to just carbon. Yeah.
I'm just a little confused. Is there like one garbage share between like the thoughts, like between like the animal soul and like
No,
God's
each soul has their own, like that's what I meant.
soul? So it's like 6.
Yes.
Oh, it's 6 times. Okay.
Yes, 6 garments. Machshava, Dibur, Maisa on the side of Nefesh Elikah, that's why I said Gucci. And then Machshava, Dibur, Maisa, that's the Marilyn Manson, like dirty, with beer all over it, and like stained, and like nasty, like blood, I don't know, and like vomit. And I don't want to get any more graphic, but like, and like smells, and like feces. Like that. Because that's the garments of the animal soul. So a person doesn't see that down here. It looks like, oh, it's really nice, like Lashon Hara. He just doesn't realize he's literally making he's becoming smelly. He's making himself very filled with stench. So down here he might not smell it, but they can smell it up there. And when the person comes up there, they're like, ooh, P.U. And by the way, it could be a guy down here that he wasn't exactly wearing Gucci. It could be he was somebody on the streets that maybe didn't always, have, a fresh fade and a nice, fresh, with some nice, he didn't go to the spa that day. But he spent his whole life doing mitzvahs. So maybe guys said like, oh, he's like, that guy always smells a little bit like, but up there they say, he smells like, Re'eh reach b'ni kereach hasadeh shabirchu Hashem, like the reach of Gan Eden. The reach mamish of the chakot tapuchim kadisha. Yes, sir.
The 10 powers that make up the soul, is it possible for any of those powers to be lost, or
they can be severely covered over and depressed, yes, and suppressed, and they need to be awakened. That's the whole name of the game: is awaken the powers within, which is what the Tanya is going to guide us on, how to awaken those powers. So this was all an introduction. The fourth parak is a very deep mamish. It's a whole new paradigm of understanding your spiritual anatomy, and it begins with this concept of, we already talked about your godly soul and your animal soul, but now we added a layer, pardon the pun, the layers called the clothing of your soul. And that is thought, speech, and action, and that's the way that your soul, whether it be the godly soul on one side or the animal soul on the other side, how it expresses itself, okay? So let's see that few lines inside. V'oid yesh l'kol nefesh elokis. And there's also to every godly soul, shloisha levushin, 3 garments. Shehem, which are machshava dibur and ma'aseh, which are thought, speech, and action. Now, we all wear layers. So use the fact that we layer up as a bit of an analogy. What would you say, it's like Under Armour, bottom layer, middle layer, outer layer. I'm sure I think in North Face, when I was buying a coat one time, there was like a system, like this is for the first layer, second layer. Don't mix the second and the fourth, like it's a technology. So what do you think is the most outer layer of our soul's garments? Action, beautiful. What's the more inner? Thought? No. More speech. And then the most inner would be speech. That's what the most inside. So the most inner garment, closest to the soul itself, it would be thought.
Yeah.
Moving more outer is speech, and the most outer garment, which means if a person sullies something on the level of thought, it's more damaging. That's one of the pshatim that the Gemara says that thoughts can even be worse than doing a sin. Thinking of a sin can be worse than even doing it, because it affects something so inside. By the way, another way to understand that Gemara is that why are thoughts more? Because the thoughts are without limit. The thought can imagine the sin being almost anything. Whereas action, it's like there's a beginning and an end. That was it. It was done and the sin finished. But in the world of thought, it's like it can go anywhere. Like the metaverse.
That's why it's like a person could speak much faster than they could act, but also think much faster than they could speak.
Very deep. I have to think about that. Yeah. Because of the nature, very good, beautiful. Because of the nature of how panini it is, the thought is so linked to the soul, to the consciousness, whereas the voice is already more out and action is further out. That's why when we explain, the Zohar has a famous piece, which is what you're thinking, 1/100th of that, so say 100th or 1/10th of that is what you can actually articulate, and then 100th of that or 1/10th of that is what the person actually can hear and understand. So you might have this unbelievable picture that's so clear to you, but by the time you're articulating it, it's already been diminished. By the time somebody actually takes that data and that experience and then processes, even what I'm saying right now, there's something happening in my consciousness, and then that's being limited by my speech, and then your ears are further only hearing a part of it.
Is that like where we're feeling some something?
Then that's part of the whole thing of symptoms, is that you're seeing that there's like downgrades. In the world of machshav, it's very big. That's why it's true. In many ways, when you can have a relationship with somebody without even saying something, it's a very deep relationship. We're going to talk more about this with Rachel and Leah. Yeah, because you're in the world before Tzimtzum. But for most people, you can't start a date like that. You need to start with talking, and then you can remove that layer, and you can get back to machshava. Yeah.
People, I've heard of experiences of psychedelics where people are able to communicate
Sure.
their thoughts. What is that? What's happening?
Is that they're removing the levushim. That's exactly it. They're removing the levushim. They don't need to do anything. They don't need to say anything. They're just there. They're in the world of their consciousness. Oftentimes, yeah, in their pre-psychic powers, which is the 10 powers of your neshama, just relating. The problem is you can't put on tefillin in that space. You can't make a bracha in that space. You actually have to say the words. You can't be Yotze Kriyas HaMegillah by thinking the Megillah in your brain. That's the whole problem with this metaverse, is they're trying to take people away from mitzvahs. Because in that world you would hear a Megillah reading. But you didn't hear it. Nobody said it. Or you make a bracha when you see the Mediterranean Sea. So you could see it, but it's not the Mediterranean. You're looking at something you're sitting in your chair in your stinky basement apartment with mold in it, and you put on some $5,000 glasses, and then you're at wherever you want to be. But you can't be Yotze Kriyas Megillah. You can't say the bracha. You need the levushim of machshava diber ma'aseh. So we're in the world of levushim. So when he explains what are the levushim of nefesh elokis, of the godly soul, shel tarig mitzvahs haTorah. That's what the godly soul levushim are involved in. What are we here to do? Torah and mitzvahs. At any given moment in your day, you should ask yourself, which mitzvah am I doing right now? Okay, right now we're doing the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, which is Keneged Kulam. That's a good news. We're also doing the mitzvah of saying words of Torah. According to Tanya Shiur, Talmud Torah is not just a mitzvah of machshava, it's a mitzvah you have to say it. To say Talmud Torah. What other mitzvah are we doing right now? You have 6 constant mitzvahs. Yichud Hashem, Avos Hashem, Yiras Hashem, Lo Yisasuru. If to always, at any given moment, you're just sitting with a friend having a beer, doing the mitzvah of the half of the Recha Kamaycha. This guy really needs just to chill. I'm doing the mitzvah of Uboy Sidbak, to be Medam to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ma'af, just like Hashem is compassionate, I'm helping a friend. Every moment there's a godly consciousness of a mitzvah that I'm doing. I smile at somebody. And Rav Zucker said this. I'm being misamech a person. The half of the Recha. Not that someone's a cheftish mitzvah. Like, oh, let me like be Mekayim smile. I got a Mekayim smile. No, it flows from you, but you're aware that it's one consciousness of God. Very, very important. Yeah, okay. Here am I gonna and by the time they get like when he actually walks by, like it was like oh. We should be saying about it to smile, mamish, be'emes.